But I also think that like we've in crypto existed in a benevolent dictatorship from all these projects and protocols. And I don't think that is intrinsically codified in crypto, and nor should it be, because we had the promise of decentralized autonomous organizations.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our fourth episode now of Midcurve. I'm back. Last episode, Andrew was missing. I know everyone missed him a ton, but he's back in the flesh and as beautiful as ever. And today we have a special guest with us, Kollan. Kollan, I'll let you introduce yourself really quick. And I'm sure a lot of people probably know about you or who you are if they're in the space. But yeah, if you could give them, people who don't know, I guess, a quick background, that'd be great.
Yeah. Hey, I'm 0xNalic or Kollan. Run a Jito-enabled validator and administer several other validators for groups like DGenApes, Validator.com, and ThugDAO. Run and operate the MetaDAO right now. That's been something that's been taking a lot of my time recently. And I've been in the space doing trading for centralized exchanges, market making, and liquidations on Solana.
Cool. So, sorry, something I forgot to mention in the intro was that you have the best mustache in crypto. You don't, I'm going to say the best beard still goes to our very own Zano. He's top, but you come in as probably best mustache in crypto. So congratulations. There's your award for the.
Yeah, I was just complaining with somebody about how much of a pain in the ass it is to co-host a podcast with somebody who's more handsome than you. And so between this and the mustache, I'm getting full on Mog today, boys. Like, this is not the usual basement dwelling crypto bro that we're dealing with today. This is tough out here.
That's funny.
The tweet yesterday, which was I think it was
you and Brian.
Yeah. The a good mustache and the best mustache, or a good mustache and a better mustache. And I said, which one was which? And it was the mustache is in the eye of the beholder. So
that's actually really good. Okay, so enough of the mustache and the Wyatt Earp talk, even though we could talk about this for probably a long time. But you kind of gave us a little bit of background, and I come from a trading background as well, and a finance background. So that was interesting to me that you talked about, you were a trader. Can you dive into your trading history a little bit and your market making history?
Yeah, for sure. I started market making in 2019. I wrote a TypeScript, just mean reverting algorithm that looked at stable coins on centralized exchanges and bought them when they were below $1 and sold them when they were above $1. And it was like dead simple, right? Like dead simple. Wrote it in TypeScript, ran it for a year. I think the APY on that was about 30% at the time, and decided like it'd be a good chance to build a fund or do something with that, because the stable coin markets were probably some of the larger markets that you could do this in, and it had high efficacy. So organized a team together to build out the position management system, order management system, everything that you would need to run a fund, the accounting, reporting, worked with HashiCorp with Boundary and Console for key management and everything. And then found out how hard or how expensive it was to set up a fund, and then like the overhead and management and accounting nightmare that gets into, and had some really great advisors that and mentors that helped me navigate that decision, that said kind of, if you like crypto, if you like trading, when you set up a fund, you become a money manager, and you should be prepared for that, because you're not necessarily going to get to poke and play around. And that was Mike Feng from Hummingbot that told me that. And later on, after we dissolved that entity, I went and found Hummingbot because I was looking for on-chain fund systems, and I found CoinAlpha had built one. And they had open sourced their software after they decided to wind that down and found Hummingbot, and they had some more sophisticated strategies out of the box built into it. And they had all the integrations and the position management and everything. So it was just configuration of strategy parameters, and started just turn that on, and the efficacy shot through the roof. So one of the investors that was interested in the fund reached out to me, and he said, from back in 2014 when I pitched him on Bitcoin, he said, "I missed you when you told me to invest in Bitcoin. I'm not going to miss it again. What do you need?" And they put in some capital, and we started trading stablecoin markets, all the stablecoin markets, with Alavanato Stoikov market making model. And it was great. I mean, we had 150K deployed. We traded 2.2 billion in volume on centralized exchanges in a year, and it was with $380 monthly operating expenses. I think when we shut it down, it was something like 17.7 billion trades, and we captured all kinds of market data and everything. And we tried different strategies for market making, other coins and tokens, and the efficacy just wasn't there. And I like to call it that, like, we got lucky with market making with training wheels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the story I hear a lot whenever I ask somebody, like, how do you make your money in crypto, right? It's often, it's always interesting, but it's rarely something that can be reproduced, because, it's these pockets of alpha that happen usually because you're early to something. And conversely, when you ask somebody how they lost their money in crypto, it's always leverage, and it's always you can take lessons from that, actually.
Yeah.
I'm curious if, like, you've been around a while, like Bitcoin 2014, market making 2019, 2.3 billion in volume. That's ridiculous. But what's like, are there other instances like that where you got to something a little bit early? Was that like your really big make it trade, or do you have like a few other ones that really just popped off for you like that?
Yeah, I think the thing, and I was looking the other day, I've got the Mt. Gox email from 2011 buying Bitcoin. I bought 0.43 Bitcoin for $8.46. Now, I don't want anybody coming after me because they think I still have it. I ate my returns, and I was a responsible trader, so 100% increase means that I sell. So, definitely didn't have investment money back then. So, but I survived. Regarding like these opportunities, I think, after that, certainly with liquidators, there was a significant opportunity because it was, solely focused on speed on Solana. That was good until it blew up. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, because being early or having those pockets were great, but then you have like the BitMEX index issue where it liquidates everybody, and then the market kind of collapses. Or I was in Bitfinex with all my Ethereum, and they liquidated everybody's positions and holdings and issued IOUs. So there were plenty of times that, like, if I had still had those positions, it would have been better. But I think that was the first aha, throwing something at the wall and having something like really pay off with respect to that. Outside of little pockets, like Uphold used to allow you to submit an order and you had 3 seconds to cancel it so you could assess price, but they patched that and shut down my account. But you're right on the money there, that there are opportunities that move the needles for smaller outfits, right? Like $3,000 a day is going to be significant for me, but it's a drop in the bucket for somebody like Citadel. So it doesn't mean that like everybody's always exercising on these like dead simple opportunities.
Mm. So without giving too much away, because obviously you have to, keep it to yourself a bit, but can you tell us what are some of those opportunities or some places that, some things you might be early to right now?
So liquidity is quite siloed right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got these pockets of markets that should be extremely similar, but they're not. And because of that, there's unprecedented opportunities that like creation through the microstructures of those siloed markets. So right now, you know, you can take a look at perpetual markets across all the space, because that seems to be spinning up left, right, and center for everybody. And I think that it's enough volume and it's enough activity that, like, if everybody flooded into it, it's probably for the best that they do. And then, you know, like, we get better markets because stuff doesn't blow up. But definitely looking into isolated, siloed liquidity, because that is where I found these advantages right now.
Man, just dropping hot alpha on us. Okay, so I guess let's get into MetaDAO and future. I can't even say that word.
Feudarchy.
Is that right? Feudarchy. Kind of embarrassing, but even when I met you at Mount DAO, I did not know that you were the co-founder of MetaDAO until I saw your Twitter handle this morning, and I was like, wait, what am I? So anyway, I want to know, first of all, just start us off with what it is, because I was kind of digging through it this morning and it was really fascinating, really interesting. So can you just walk us through how it works and keep in mind, from a Midcurve perspective? Explain it like I'm a Midcurve, which I am.
Yeah, I'll do my best. I think that Prophet actually has an incredible amount of patience to like work people through to have that aha moment. And I'm a trader, I understand market structures, and like, this just makes sense. It clicks. So at a high level, you know, this was a theorized governance mechanism by Robin Hanson, and he wrote it about over 20 years ago, I think, or about 20 years ago. And it was based, and I may mess all this up, but this is my understanding of it. It's based on the idea that, you know, like, in aggregate, with sufficient sophisticated participants, markets tend to be better predictors of outcomes. And therefore, if you can apply the same logic to governance decisions or decisions for companies or entities, then in theory, you have a better mechanism, rather than like a board of directors or political influence, which is cheaper to buy and cheaper to acquire and manipulate. So at a high level, that's, you know, like, what this concept is using markets to determine decision making or choice making within you know, like, units of organization. And so what we've done with the MetaDAO, what Prophet's done with the MetaDAO, is codify that on chain, on Solana, and build you know, a program that has parameters that people trade the markets when a governance decision is up for debate, and whichever market trades at a higher price is the one that resolves into, you know, the final market or the final decision that needs to be executed by the program.
Mm-hmm. So these are just taking a step back. It's essentially, the DAO is essentially a prediction market with an order book. Is that correct?
Yes, and it's distinct in the fact that you have two markets, right? So you have, in our case, a pass and a fail market. So it's not a prediction market that, like, the outcome is what you're trying to predict. It's the price of the decision. So you're trying to price whether the passing of this proposal increases the value of the asset that you're trading, or, you know, if it decreases or it would be a bad decision, then the, you know, like, the fail market would be the one that you would want to have succeed. So the price should be higher on the fail market. And the example people use is, like, imagine that you want to make the decision on whether you should fire the CEO or not, right? And the board of directors typically would make that decision. And whether the CEO is buddy-buddy with the board of directors, or there's different nuances behind the scenes, even though it's not good for the company to keep this CEO on, right? There's an incredible amount of, like, influence that political power can have and social power can have. Whereas here, you would be trading the markets And in doing that, right, the markets should effectively say keeping the CEO on would cost us more money or be less shareholder value. And we should then therefore fire him. And the market should actually accurately price that with a sufficient amount of sophisticated or expert participants.
Mm.
I love this project because I think it sort of reflects a lot of. I'm a recent Solana transplant, for the record. I come from Ethereum, and I think the Ethereum DAO culture in particular has this kind of callow, very naive idealism about them, where we're just going to coordinate out of the problem, but we don't exactly know what that looks like yet. And the whole futarchy movement, it's very Solana to me in that it's more utilitarian, it's more aggressive. It's not only are we solving the problem, but we're bidding our way to victory, right? I've found that fascinating, and I'm wondering, especially because you're one of our shadowy super delegates over at Jito Foundation. I'm curious, like, what do you think about this particular approach and why it makes sense in the context of the Solana community?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that you have to be able to do this. You have to be able to like have order books or have market structures, and it's probably cost prohibitive on other chains to do it, or technologically prohibitive. Solana provides a unique opportunity there. But I also think that like we've in crypto existed in a benevolent dictatorship from all these projects and protocols. And I don't think that is intrinsically codified in crypto, and nor should it be, because we had the promise of decentralized autonomous organizations. And right now we have decentralized, organizations, right? Like it's there's no if there is autonomy, it's quasi in existence. There's a lot of like social layer, reputation building concepts here, whereas this affords and like you highlighted, it's aggressive, but it affords a threat which I think doesn't exist in the crypto community like it exists in real life, which is if you don't show up to work for 5 days and don't have an excuse, right? Like you're going to get fired. But in crypto, there isn't necessarily like that threat, especially if you do like initial token allocations or the governance is controlled by 5 people. In theory, that's the coordination effort that you need to do. Whereas this kind of sits there and anything could, in theory, be brought up and executed against. And I think that that's one of the more scary things that people have brought up of like, what couldn't you do with this? And the answer is pretty, like restricted. But I think it exists on Solana because the structure's there, people are willing to experiment, and we're not as entrenched in the conventional wisdom or the way that this is the way things go, this is the way things have to be. And I think that that's a unique opportunity for us to like thrust forward and experiment with this stuff.
So you talked about actual autonomous organizations. What are some of those that you're excited about?
Crypto affords a lot of structure that you can yield control and authority. In that we are on the precipice of agents, autonomous agents that are going to be dictating aspects of our life. And that this is philosophical right now for me, but it wouldn't be too far of a stretch to imagine that you'd have some AI assistant that's going to try to schedule events for you and get you a haircut when you need it and just handle some of the more mundane aspects of your life. And crypto affords the opportunity to say like, well, here's your budget, right? And here's your authority to go out and spend it and do it in a programmatic way with guardrails and constraints. Whereas traditional finance rails, you'd have to have a credit card that then has a spending limit, and maybe that works, but maybe the credit card number gets stolen and things like that. But as far as that goes, I think that the autonomous actions and the interactions are important to start to codify and understand, because the social layer won't always exist there. You can't convince your assistant your artificial assistant, if they decide that they want to do something different for you. So I think that
I'm afraid I can't open the pod doors, Dave.
exactly. So like that's a high level view. I think that the interest that I've received from people, that are on the fringes, that aren't necessarily in governance for this, is quite telling. And then I think the interest from certain DAOs that have reached out and started to say, like, how might this work, or where can we help to get this ready for prime time. I think that that's also telling. So I'm keen to see what people do with this experiment, and where it can fit in, and what needs to be done to adopt it. Because I think it solves a really important problem with governance, which is attention. You don't necessarily have to do a roadshow and get everybody together and organized, and like, hey, we're going to vote on this day. We got to get to quorum. We got to, like, you're herding cats there. And this says, like, here's a market structure. There should be arbitrage opportunities. There should be mispricing events, and there should be sufficient capital to incentivize investment in technology to play here. And it should attract that, so that it may drastically change the behavior of DAOs as well. So that's the other thing that's quite interesting to me, because if DAOs vote once a month right now, maybe they vote once a week now, because they don't have to reach those thresholds, because it's pretty programmatic. And if it sits in a poor price, at some point, just like a Dutch auction, right, like somebody's willing to take that bet. And I think that it's unknown to me how this will play out, but I still think that it introduces some very interesting solutions to problems that DAOs face today.
Great stuff. No, super excited to see how it plays out. But wanted to double back on a point you made about, the rise of autonomous agents in our lives. Segmenting now into our Midcurve minute section. Just want to talk about markets with one of the top Solana markets guys out there. I'm curious to pick your brain about the Solana AI projects out there right now. When you look at them, some of them by the numbers, it's really stunning. Like Nosana's up 700% over the last 3 months. SNS is up 10x. Something called Dith that I haven't had time to research yet. It launched a few weeks ago. It's up 2x. Is there actually like some fire to the smoke? Is there some here? If so, is Solana AI particularly positioned well? And if that's the case, how do we go about evaluating some of these teams behind the projects? How do we tell, what's the wheat and what's the chaff?
Yeah, so I'll start first by saying that I'm grossly undereducated in this realm with respect to that. So like everything will be speculatory from my perspective and opinion, but I think that it does have a place on blockchain, right? Like absolutely, without a doubt. The what's afforded by blockchain is paramount for data aggregation and understanding, and then actions solidified in history. These are things that autonomous agents are absolutely must interface with, because you can't go back in a black box, but you can inspect on chain what's occurring, right? So that I think that that's critically important, especially if stuff starts to go off the rails. As far as what people are deploying on chain, and then like the overall interest in artificial intelligence, right, across the board, I think it's natural that it should disseminate into the blockchain space. And so you probably have some overvaluations and some, like long shots with it. But for using the blockchain, right, you need something like Solana that has high performance and high throughput. So that's probably one of the best places if people are playing in it, because that necessitated, because otherwise, like, what are you going to do? You're going to wait 15 minutes to see what your your agent's doing, or like what it did do, or the decision that it made to sell all your assets and buy you a plane ticket to Portugal. So I think that the attention's there. It's definitely a hot topic. I think that everybody that I know in the AI and machine learning space was blown away by Chat GPT when it came out. Like, way, they thought it was 5-10 years away. So it wouldn't be a stretch at this point to say that anybody's projections or understandings of what this could possibly do. I think the video stuff was really interesting. What's that called, Soro? That OpenAI released?
Yeah, the visualizer, sorry. It just puts me on my ass every time I watch one of those videos, man.
Yeah, so is that possible, right? Like, can you bring some of this information and data and make it accessible to agents, right? Like, it makes sense that the financial scraping of the interactions on blockchain is a natural fit, and people that play with that hardware and that software and understand it, which has been like one of my fundamental thesis, is like, touch everything so that you understand what it's like. It's not to say that you have to develop. I'm not a Rust developer, right? But I've seen the tool chain. I've built things with it. But knowing, just even understanding that puts in your scope of like how this fits into everything, and how, like, you can leverage the technology, I think, is the important bit for that, for projects that are building on there. So, not to answer directly on like in any specific asset, but I think that'd be my broad thesis on it.
So I guess moving away from just AI specific projects now, everyone's pretty hyped about a few projects on Solana, namely Camino, Jupe, MarginFi, Jito. Not to plug her own thing, but what are some other protocols that you think we should be experimenting with, or that you're kind of excited about right now?
This will sound like, I really like the concept around Soul Linked. I like the fact that like putting some sort of collateral up to get an expected outcome is, it fits really well with Solana because it's cheap, and then it also creates these incentive structures and accessibility points. So I love that Totally created a blog to say, if I'm going to write, like, I want to be incentivized a little bit. So I think that the communication thing there, like, put your money where your mouth is for some of that stuff, I think could really reshape how we communicate, and then like the effectiveness of our communication there. So I like Soul Linked. I think that it's a cool concept, and I think we could exercise, quite a bit there. I think the authority stuff in squads is really cool, right? Like, we get closer to an MPC, but on chain, so that you can, award or, put restrictions on different accounts. I think that stuff is sorely needed. The wallet experience across crypto is still a huge barrier for entry for many people, and the more things that we can kind of put together there is really interesting. I'm interested to see more markets that we see in traditional finance start to move on chain as liquidity increases and like these systems get better. Dated futures are certainly something that get traded quite a bit. Options on those as well. I think that those are things that, if you would expect the acceleration of, us like sucking up some of the TradFi volume and like capacity of things, would be more of those markets coming online. I'm very interested in the fractionalization of assets and investments. I think that that's really cool. We have these concepts of like phantom shares or ghost shares that like technically could probably tie to tokens. The regulatory landscape is an interesting play. I know people don't like that, but like the more we get matured, the more that interfaces, and then the better clarity we have for teams, and then that means more money can strategically be poured into some of this stuff. So I'd say that's like high level, but the projects that are interesting to me are, in that regard, kind of moving the needle to get us to like accelerated adoption, not necessarily just us, the same 80,000 or 40,000 or 20,000 of us just moving our money around to each other.
Yeah, that number depends on how many farmers are on the particular project, right? No, it's probably closer to 80. I think it's 80. Anyway, I'm curious though. You're somebody who's been through what, like 5, 6, 7 cycles at this point, right? And perhaps the most important skill in all of this, aside from avoiding the landmines like FTX, Mt. Gox, Bitfinex, whoever it is being able to tell when it's the top. One of my favorite sort of fake quantitative signals, I'm sure you have many real signals at this point, is Coinbase app rankings. I think last 2 cycles, when Coinbase cracks the top 100 number of apps in popularity, new downloads, that's when it's the top, right? And right now it's at like 300. But I'm curious, do you have like another sort of soft indicator like that? Is there a fun sort of, this is when I know it's over, this is the fat lady singing kind of moment?
To joke fully, it's when somebody messages me about Ripple.
Every time, yeah.
every time.
It's Ripple or it's Cardano is the other one.
I get a text from somebody I haven't talked to in like 2 years, and then I'm like, this is certainly it. No, I've been learning quite a bit from Howard Marks, because he's got a memo that he sends out, and he talks a lot about different times when he's an investor and their investment thesis on, are things overly optimistic or, like overly pessimistic is what he kind of evaluates. And then when they're overly pessimistic and you think about what the 2 outcomes are, right? Which is like, you have a total global financial collapse, so it doesn't matter where we would put our money, we'd lose everything. Or B, like it moves up from here, right? And then on the same thread of like overly optimistic, I think that that's probably something that I look at. And then what has fundamentally shifted? So have we seen new inflows of users by droves, right? Like if something fundamentally hasn't been built or changed or shifted or is in progress for, I think that that's probably what I look for when you start to see a lot of Twitter accounts that, like you haven't seen before, or people are talking about things that like probably aren't investable things. That's probably where I think the top is.
So it's funny because I literally put out a tweet yesterday that I got a text from a normie friend of mine. It's like, yo, what do I buy? And this is the first signal. It's like, oh, my Coinbase app is up, my Bitcoin's up. What's next? Do I buy? And it's exactly what you said. Do I buy XRP or do I buy ADA? I don't know. And so that's one of my top signals, but I think I need to get a few more texts before we're truly at the top. Moving into more of, speaking of normies and community building and all of that, you've built communities, and you're good at it. So I wanted to ask you, because, and just like as some advice here, what would you tell someone, or what advice would you give to someone looking to build a strong community for their project? And how do you keep your community engaged?
I think that there's no like hard, fast rule. It's kind of like business books. There's a lot of like recommendations and ways to go about it. There's probably not one formula that fits all. I found for me personally that being authentic is one of the most important things for me, but also the people that you touch. You're not going to touch everybody with respect to like how you go about things. People are going to disagree with you, but I think being available and being amenable and having the capacity for your opinion to change. These are rules for life, right? Like it's not just about building a community, but these are things that I've found that like allow you to relate to people better. And I think treating, people with respect and meeting them halfway and understanding that like these people are in different phases of their life. They could be up at 3 a.m. after, like a long day and stressed. So I try to like meet them where they are and, try to say like, listen, these are opportunities for us to learn from each other. We're all in the same boat. I think that's one of the other things that people tend to forget, because we do a lot of tribalism in here. And therefore, and we are trading markets. So it's in theory, zero sum games a lot. So I think that gets lost. by a lot of people. And the other thing that like has been successful for me is direct one-on-one communication. So when somebody is argumentative or they are combative, being able to like reach out to them and discuss with them. But the thing that they always end up pointing back to is my contribution in what I've said or how I've communicated. So like I remember that there was quite a lot of pressure over Christmas for the Solana Foundation when they changed the delegation stuff, or they had missed some payments on certain things, and somebody came in and was tagging Tim pretty aggressively and saying like, we're validators are all working today, you know, like why isn't the foundation working today? So you know, like talking to him, and you know, he DM'd me and we had a little bit of back and forth, and then he was like, actually, I searched your name on the Solana Tech Discord and I see that you've been helping people out quite a bit. So like I see that, you know, like you're a value add, so I'll, you know, value your opinion or your perspective there. So that's like not something that you can start today, right? Like you can't build it today, but you can build it up over time. And I think that that's the genuine like human to human relationship, but it can be exhausting. I'm not I'm not gonna lie, right? Like you have to be yourself 24/7, 365. This is Discord, this is everywhere. But certainly there, and then finding where your strengths are, right? Like if you're not strong in the technicals, I'll say I'm not strong in the technicals there. I don't know, but let me find somebody that can. So that, and then just knowing your people. I mean, you'll have capitulation. That's natural. You're not trying to appease everybody. You'll find your groove or your crowd. And that's probably more important than the numbers and statistics that you're trying to target for with respect to that. And those people will attract the other people too. Right? Like that's what I've seen the most is like people be like, yo, get in here. You know, like this person's goated, or, you know, like whatever it is, right? Like you tend to find that gravity. And I think that that's probably the most important and what that caters to. Yeah.
That's so your baseline advice is add value and be a decent human being. that's like the baseline. Just be a decent human being.
You know, it's crazy though, but because you see it, right? Like you see it, and people get like deservedly upset. And I think that like there's a lot of subjectivity that goes into that. But I think like objectively, there's like the opportunity to cultivate a good community, because these people often have reputations in other communities too. So that social layer of interaction, because we are social beings, we are on this planet together. So I think it's critically important to understand that like it's not just like, you know, people treat customer service reps like terribly. It's like, well, this is another person on the phone that's their day and that's what they have to experience. And you often get better response if you're polite and you're courteous and you just, you know, be a decent human being.
I do think it's deceptively difficult, some of your advice too, to the extent, you know, you made the point that like it's tough to be an authentic, warm, and genuine human being 24/7. Like part of your advice is straight up, to grow a community, you have to be a Zen master, and there might be truth to that.
I don't know. I don't know if it's so hard for Kollan. He seems just like a decent human being.
Yeah,
just
that's
like a very kind person and helpful person. It just comes naturally to this guy. For the rest of us, yes, I think it's a much harder thing to do.
I think, you know, like there's two things I think there. One is I have a lot of deleted unsent messages. I'll tell you that. You know, like if there's ever a time that I feel aggressive, I know that like I'm not going to send this. And then there's another, I watched Ken Burns had a documentary on Samuel Clemens, which was Mark Twain. And he used to, there's a part in there where he used to write angry letters to his counterparts and his peers. And his wife would go out into the mailbox and she would take them out before they would get sent. So I think that there's some like, you know, like sometimes backing off, understanding that like you're in Discord, so communication can happen asynchronously, and then resetting for this so that you can have a constructive, you know, communication is really important. And I'm not the best at that. I'm still learning every day, but I think that like can go a long way just from the outset.
Yeah. I mean, what you said does seem simple, like Andrew said, but it is quite profound. We actually had a meeting right before this where we were talking about building community, and I was kind of mentioning that I think authenticity goes a very long way, and just being able to admit your weaknesses can go a long way, right? Like you can say, I'm not good at the technicals. I'm not good at the technicals. I only understand half of what most of you guys are talking about. But yeah, I think people they can identify with that. Just being honest. So that's huge. I think we're kind of wrapping it up here, but is there anything else that you want to talk about, or any other topics you want to touch on, or messages you want to get out to the midcurves?
Yeah, I think that demand more of your governance systems, demand more of your DAOs, have people start to look into what's being worked on over the MetaDAO, have people start to explore what's being worked on in the DAO governance structure in general. We're trying to build something successful here, and there's business lines, there's revenue opportunities, and we can't sit around here and build hobby projects. We've got to make this crypto thing work. And if not for any other reason, for me, because I've been in this professionally for 10 years, it can't fail. I think that we're fine to start, saying that, maybe a benevolent dictator isn't enough anymore. And maybe we have opportunities to do things here, and we can meet regulators halfway, and we can start to do this stuff, and we can start to demand a better market structure and economics here, so that it isn't, it doesn't bear the burden of a poor image, and people, it can become more accessible to people. And that's how we grow this.
Yeah. Andrew, as the leader, or the somewhat leader of the Jito DAO, how do you feel about him saying demand more of your DAO?
I mean, I've always been intimately aware of the fact that my mandate at the foundation is to put myself out of a job, and so I cheer on Kollan for calling for my head even faster than maybe I would. That's good stuff.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll wrap this one up here. Kollan, thank you so much for taking the time, man. It was awesome talking with you, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Love to talk philosophy and crypto, and really appreciate you guys taking the time.